My signal is not working out right now. Let's get that music out of here. My signal is not working out right now for that. But you are live on the RSJ Dynasty Dive. Welcome. Of course, it's me, Chase Marquette-Gaines. Of course, Emery's here. Roto Street Emery, at Roto Street Emery. And we keep making our Roto Street rounds. Today, our honorable guest is JimboSlice. It's how you know him if you read any of his articles. He's a fellow writer here. Jimbo is here today because, per the usual, we have somebody involved in a big trade that has to do with the topic that we're talking about for the day. We like to have him on here. So, Jimbo, how's it going?
Everything's great. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to do this. Fan of the program, so ready to talk some trades and tight ends.
Yeah. So today we're talking tight end anchors in Dynasty. We went through all the other skill positions. Fourth and final, last but not least, we're not just talking about who we consider our current locked-in long-term starters at tight end, but since the list is generally pretty short for the positional scarcity that you got going on at tight end, we're also going to project who we see becoming locked-in long-term Dynasty starters 3 years from now. And on top of that, Jimbo and I, over the offseason in the RSJ Superflex Dynasty League, we had two big trades going. 16 total assets involved in these two trades, with Travis Kelce being a big centerpiece of that. He's going to be obviously the main topic because you're talking tight ends. Obviously, Kelce is going to be a main guy that you're talking about there. So we'll dive into all the pieces of that trade and kind of the team trajectories and what we were thinking as far as the particular players and picks involved. And we got our unbiased third party here in Emery for that one too. We'll see just right off the bat. Did you catch that trade? Did anything really pop out to you? Like anything big right off the bat pop out to you about that one?
I mean, moving Kelce is always going to be. It's always going to move the needle. It's going to make a team that much better. But I'm looking over here. I see you've got in some of our notes, you've got the entirety of the whole asset flip, and it looks promising. I mean, your entire sort of last two off seasons were focused on getting younger and adding quality youngsters. Darren Waller aside, I mean, he's only a couple of years younger than Kelce. I mean, you did get dramatically younger there. Geno Smith, notwithstanding it now, but I mean, it's always going to be funky moving Kelce. But before we talked on the show, Jimbo and I were talking about going all in and sort of accumulating assets to be front runners. And Kelce is far and away the best at this tight end position, and it makes you the positional difference there with him in your lineup versus anybody else is massive. So it has made Jimbo one of our front runners. It's going to be interesting to see both sides of this because looking at it cursory right now, like I like a lot of the pieces on both sides. I mean, yeah, I'm sure we'll get into it, but I don't have a full on take about it. But Kelce's certainly a game changer. It's been my redraft strategy for the last 3 years now to take him early in the first round. I've been advocating for it to all of my buddies, not in the home league that I play in, to take him probably if I was picking third, I would take him. I don't know about you guys. That might be a different discussion for a different day. But I would probably take him third right now after Justin Jefferson and your favorite of the running backs, maybe McCaffrey or Eckler or Chubb if you live on Twitter, so.
Yeah, no, we're talking about a guy who last season, 15.4 points per game. The next in line was George Kittle at 11.4 points per game. Like, yeah, I think Wolf maybe 1 or 2 years ago was even talking about him as the 101 in redraft. I mean, yeah, no, third. I wouldn't be shocked if anybody takes him high first round, just because. I mean, yeah, Father Time's got to catch up with everybody, right? But I don't
He
know.
said he wants to play till the wheels fall off. He said he wants to play. Yeah, so I mean, Jimbo, what sort of value do you put in that? Do you think that they're dynasty wise is rolling the dice like this worth it for you? How much longer do you think he's going to produce like this?
I'd see at least another 2 years, maybe 3 out of him. That might be pushing a lot, but like you kind of mentioned earlier, the positional value is insane. When I think I started the season, I had like Cole Kmet and like a couple other no names, and it's like it's always that glaring missing piece in your roster, and having him such a huge positional advantage. So, in a win now mode, like. Shout out to Jackson. That lineup's insane. So maybe I shouldn't be pushing that hard because it's impossible to top that roster. But I feel like the best chance I have, you need to have that like top end tight end in your roster, and I felt like that was my one glaring weakness. So
sure, yeah.
I was going to do whatever it took.
Mm-hmm. And we can hammer this point. We're going to all evening talking about it, but. Kelce is the guy. He's the only tight end that you would draft in the first 4 rounds of a redraft league or anything like that. And it's just so hard to get legit every week production. Like set it and forget it sort of type of guy, and he is that. But we're hoping to try to find some more of these. As like we talked about, we're going to do something a little different today, where we have tight end for 3 years from now, because we know tight end development in the NFL is it's projected as a little bit slower than you say the wide receivers. I know we've seen a great crop of receivers come in over the past 2 or 3 years and immediately make a massive impact, both in real life and in fantasy. So it's going to be interesting to see what y'all have for the future of the tight end position here. Dane, any thoughts before we hop into some of these rankings?
Not really. I mean, I'd like to start off with if we can just dive right into our list of anchors here. I'd like to start off with Travis Kelce, because he almost didn't make my list. So when we talk about long-term locked-in starters, we're talking about like 3 years is really where we're keep kind of thinking of for tight ends, running backs, wide receivers. Quarterbacks was 5 years, but we think 3+ years for tight ends. And so with Kelce, who's like, I'm not exactly sure where exactly the typical age apex is for tight ends, but I think it's safe to say Travis Kelce is like on the other side of that. And so he's still living out this outlier type of career. And when I think of Travis Kelce, I kind of project him for a Tony Gonzalez type of career. Tony Gonzalez, his age 36 and 37 seasons, he was a tight end to both years. So when I look at Kelce, I think he could absolutely do that. I know this past offseason there was a comment when he was asked about retirement that maybe if Andy Reid wasn't in Kansas City, that he would consider it. I feel like that's the only thing kind of keeping me from. That was the biggest question of all, I think, going into this, and whether or not I would kind of have him as a fringe guy or just go ahead and call him a locked-in anchor for the next 3+ years. Because Tony Gonzalez, he didn't really have like. I didn't go back to like he was on the Chiefs, but they were no dynasty when he was there. I don't know if that guy's. Has Tony Gonzalez won a Super Bowl or been to a Super Bowl, anything like that? Because I feel like that might be a big factor in why he continued his career on, as opposed to Travis Kelce, where how many rings does he have now? He can like He can hang it up. He's a Hall of Famer. Like, so the big difference between those guys' careers, I think, was another part of this too. Like, where are we feeling as far as how long we? So we have him on this list as another 3+ years. So we're all confident here that he's going to play another 3+ years.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay.
With Pat locked in, Andy Reid's not getting. He's fat as can be. I mean, he can't get any fatter. He's not going anywhere. You know, I think those guys are going to be long haul type people, and I think, I think that they will be the stabilizing factor for the next couple of years while Kansas City retools their wide receiver room. I know Tony's going to be a interesting aspect to their team with a full offseason under his belt in Kansas City. Hopefully he can stay healthy, but outside of that, wide receiver one, yeah, you're telling me. But the addition of is it Raishi or Racy Rice?
I say Raishi Rice. Maybe I'm mispronouncing it.
I would imagine that's probably closer to it. But with that, there's gonna be massive overhaul at the wide receiver position in Kansas City for the next couple of years, and I figured that Kelce and Mahomes and Andy Reid are going to see that through, steady the ship there. We were talking earlier, Jimbo. That's probably the timeline: 2 or 3 years of this maxed out potential, and then a similar sort of like you brought up, a Gonzalez-esque sort of ride off into the sunset with the Chiefs.
That's the thing. He also has like not a lot of competition right now. Like obviously with Tyreek gone and all these like young and rookie receivers, like Mahomes needs Kelce to be the guy. He's going to continue to be the guy, unless Ducks boy Justin Ross goes absolutely nuclear.
Yeah.
Kelce, he's going to be option A, B, and C in that offense. So it's going to be multiple years of steady production, I would imagine.
I know Andy Reid's 65 years old now. So, I don't know, so let's say Andy Reid retires. Let's say he retires after next season even. And then, Travis Kelce is like, okay, you know what, I'm done. I feel like even in that's an extreme case. And I feel like even that possibility wasn't enough to ultimately keep Kelce from being off of my list of anchors. Because that's still a risk worth taking. And it seems like we can all agree with that. Like if you say you trade for Travis Kelce and you think, okay, I can get another 3+ years out of this guy. If you only get one, and then he decides, you know what, yeah, I'm going to retire. It's not like anybody. You would still go back a year, back and say I would probably still make this trade, just because of the positional dominance. We can go through the numbers here, but I feel like say last season, you take a third of Travis Kelce's production, away. The guy is still, 15 points? He's still tight end 2 per game right there with Mark Andrews, but tied with Mark Andrews. Insane. Like you're not getting that anywhere else. So even just the little bit of retirement talk we heard last year is tough, man. It's tough to be scared off from that. And he's probably the only guy at any position who can do that.
Definitely. And so I think our first sort of talking point, while we're looking at these anchors here, both Jimbo and myself have Kyle Pitts up there, but you do not, Dane. Would you talk me through your sort of thought process on that?
So I don't know for sure that Kyle Pitts is going to be utilized well in Atlanta, and I'm not sure if he gets moved out of Atlanta at some point. When is that going to happen? What if he's just stuck there? And, he doesn't really get utilized in the way that we all know, he potentially could. So I think that's the biggest thing. I have him there, anchors 3 years from now, Kyle Pitts. I feel like right off the bat here, he might be stuck for a while in a less than ideal situation that keeps his production and keeps his numbers down. But like at some point, we're all here betting on talent, right? And I feel like at some point the pendulum has to swing the other way, where somebody's going to maybe trade for Kyle Pitts and then utilize him, to his max potential. Or maybe things change with the scheme in Atlanta, and that's the way it happens. But so far, at this moment, it's still very weird. Like I don't know I really haven't kept up with Kyle Pitts news lately. Like, so I don't know if there's anything that's changed about his situation that I might not know about. But like, is there talk that he's going to be more, like, not just more utilized in the passing game, but like much more? I feel like it's got to be much more in that offense before I'm like, okay, I can go get Kyle Pitts, lock him into my lineup, and he's not going to lose me any weeks. Or he's not any, but he's not going to lose me most weeks, and I can be confident starting him.
No, I agree with everything you just said. The only reason I put him as an anchor is I just feel like he has so much value. Sure, it's probably all tied up in, like, because he's so young, he's so talented, with the thought of him in the future. Like, the value for him is insane. It's just so big at that position that, like, I feel like he just has to be there. Everything else is like working against him. It's a run-heavy offense with a shitty quarterback, and they just drafted Bijan, who's going to be a touch machine.
Yeah.
So it's like everything about Pitts is like stinky this year, but it's just he's so young, and the talent is like generational, that they say, and like prospects love him. He graded out like insanely with the NFL draft. There's just so much potential there that his value is so high. I just had to include him as an anchor.
Yeah, I think the value is what the touching point here for Kyle Pitts. I mean, there is no other tight end in the league like him right now. I mean, he's built like a receiver, first rookie tight end to have 1,000 yards. I mean, there was an extra game in there, but I mean, we won't talk about that. But just alongside Drake London, Atlanta has built a strong offense. I mean, my point where I was thinking when you were discussing there, Dane, Arthur Smith is bound to be fired next year or the year after, correct?
Right? Maybe not though.
We talked about this last week. I can't remember what it was about. It was talking we were talking about Tampa Bay wide receivers, and if because that division is just so terrible, if one of these teams, if say the Falcons are sitting at 4-4 week 9 after their bye, 4-4, and they're a game back from, I don't know, from New Orleans or anything like that. Arthur Smith's not going anywhere. That's the dilemma here that we have in all 4 of those teams in the NFC South.
Yeah.
All 4 of them are going to be close to making the playoffs. And you can't fire a playoff a coach. This isn't the NBA. It's not Dwayne Casey. It's like coach of the year getting fired. There's no precedent for that. And the issue, I believe, for all of these teams is that everyone else around them is just so bad that any inkling of hope, any opportunity to get better near the deadline, they will, and then they'll go into next year with the same crappy outlook, but just less ability to win. And so my whole thinking when you were talking, Dane, is that Arthur Smith has got to go. There hasn't been a QB class since the Burrow Herbert Tua draft that has as much arm talent in it as next year. I don't understand why teams aren't tanking. That has nothing to do with Kyle Pitts being one of my anchors, but it just is you got to take 1 year and then you can reassess because you have all of these options right here. It just doesn't make sense to me.
It's like, why would you waste like a couple of years of developing Kyle Pitts with Desmond Ridder when you could like tank and give him Caleb Williams, and then you could have like one of the next great quarterback, receiver, tight end duos for God knows how long.
Yeah.
But coaches aren't going to do that though. Coaches, at least as far as I can tell, I don't know. Like, not even Lovie Smith is gonna, get the number one pick for the Texans. No, he's out there to win every single game. So yeah, he cost the Texans the number one pick, but what are these guys going to do? Like, it's got to be so ingrained in them to try to win that, like, it's not like I can blame them either for just trying to do what they can. I don't know. At some point, there's like how many teams are trying to tank at the same time? Like, they can't. Not everybody can, I guess, tank at the same time. So at some point, you just kind of got to say, let's roll with what we have. And I kind of like what's coming out of Atlanta as far as like this whole talk of this positionless scheme that's coming out of Atlanta right now. I feel like there's talk about their offensive scheme that might resemble something that's fresh. Like when the Wildcat first came out, Wildcat was fresh, and it was pretty short-term success before defenses caught up to it. But for that, it was only like 2 years max, maybe 3, that you saw some success with the Wildcat. I feel like the way that Arthur Smith and the people out of Atlanta are talking about their offense for the upcoming season, it might be a real fresh look. It might be successful. It might be a division winner type of thing, something that maybe defenses catch up within a couple of years. But I don't see, especially with Bajan there now, and they got a good line. Like the run game is going to be good. The passing game, like Desmond Ridder doesn't have to be awesome for this team to even win the division, I don't think. So short term, it's really hard for me to see Kyle Pitts being someone that I can stick into my lineup, set him and forget him, and be confident. But yeah, in 3 years, so much can change in 1 year. So in 3 years, yeah, I'll take that risk that he's going to be utilized, and we're going to see at least close to, and within the realm of the Kyle Pitts that we all wanted to see with him coming out of the draft.
All right. I mean, I can agree with all of that. You're right about saying that so much can change in 1 year. No one knows who. I mean, no one knows who's going to really come out of that division or anything, or what Desmond Ridder, what the steps he could take this year. So it's a fair argument. I just have to bank on the talent. I would have to. He's certainly valued as a tight end anchor. Wouldn't you say? Like in most dynasty leagues, he's got to be. Right. He's more valuable than Hawkinson right now. He's more valuable, or at least as valuable as Mark Andrews. Would you say?
Yeah, but if we go back to our RSJ Superflex Dynasty League, both of your teams are legit contenders. But say you got an offer for Kyle Pitts today that was realistic, you're like, okay, I could get Kyle Pitts. How confident are you plugging him in this season, and how well he's going to contribute to winning a ship?
Not very. Honestly, At this moment, no. I mean, that could change week 1, but
it could.
At this moment, no.
It could, and there's always that possibility too. Just the way, as much as these seem to be held back so far, it's really hard to see that changing very quickly. Anyway.
Outside of Kyle Pitts, we all have the same other anchors. It's a small list, and that's why we decided to do this 3 years from now. Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, TJ Hawkinson, those are basically the guys, right? If you've got
Yeah.
that, you're content with your roster. You can build around these guys, and you know that you've got a solid block there at tight end. Who are we going to talk? Which sort of fringe guys do you want to talk about? I know I have one that is not on either, or not on my list, but on both of yours, and that's David Njoku. I've got a little bit of an argument here against David Njoku. Let me pull up these stats I got right here. Last year, fantasy points scoring wise, he finished in the top 5, he finished in the top 6 4 times. He eclipsed 10 points per game 6 times. He also failed to eclipse 6 points. Let's see, 4 times. So 5 over 10, 4 on under 6. The volatility is too much for me. I would feel very, very bad. He's a darling on Twitter. He's a darling to everybody with the size, the speed, the hands, the red zone conversion rates, all of this, that, and the other. But if we're going to make this guy a fringe anchor at tight end, a guy that you're willing to be like, yeah, this is my roster, this is my tight end, I have no problems, leaving it be for the entire season and just letting it roll. David Njoku can't be that for me.
Well, this is more about this is. I don't want to say this is a clean slate right now with the Browns offense, but I think we're going to see a different Deshaun Watson, and this is, I think, we get the sample size we got from last year. It was very mediocre. So this is purely banking on athleticism and just my own kind of personal projection of where the Browns offense is going. So I could definitely see an argument where it's like, what if we see the same old Browns?
Mm-hmm.
That could definitely happen. But that's also kind of the equivalent to helmet scouting. So I try not to do that too. So when we were talking about quarterback anchors a few episodes ago, I was the only one out of the 3 that considered Deshaun Watson an anchor at quarterback in Dynasty, and the logic there was pretty much the same. Like we didn't see it in Cleveland, we definitely saw it in Houston, and all I really needed to hear was some enough convincing language out of Browns camp that Kevin Stefanski wasn't going to be too proud to run his scheme, and he was going to be able to cater the system more to Deshaun Watson's strengths. And I had kind of heard enough out of there that made me think that was going to be the case this season. And so it's very projections based. Clearly, we've seen plenty of flashes from David Njoku over the years, and there's a lot of. I still feel like there's so much unrealized potential with Njoku that he has a shot to go out and become a legit anchor at tight end, depending on how the Browns offense looks this season. Like, I think the path's there, and there enough to have me put him on the fringe. Like, I do have him on my dynasty team, and it wouldn't surprise me to see him become top 6 in that offense. I don't like, it's not like any kind of set in stone thing whatsoever. I feel like there's a chance he still kind of he's maybe like, the 4th option in the receiving game. Mm-hmm. But there's too much talent there in Cleveland right now to leave him off the fringe for me. So it's basically that he does have that elite athleticism for a tight end, and then just the projection of his situation. The shortest, simplest way to put it. Is that kind of the same thing for you, Jimbo?
Yeah, so I agree with both your points. Like, to you, Dane, like, the talent, like, Watson's going to get significantly better. Like, he just has to, because you probably can't play any worse than he did last year. Like, it's probably physically impossible. But, like, the talent's there. He's a freak, athletic monster. So like there's a clear path where he can perform extremely well and be like a really good tight end for fantasy. But to Emery's point, like the inconsistency is a little concerning. And he was my tight end 1 on a team last year, and I went into this offseason like I can't do this again as him as my tight end 1. Like if I want to be a serious team, I need to go get a Mark Andrews. So I see both sides of it. You can go either way, but that's why I feel like he's a decent fringe option because it feels like he's right on that line.
Mm-hmm. Dane, you brought up the fact like, well, this Browns offense could be different next year. There can't be any way that Deshaun Watson plays as poorly as he did. I mean, it's the same. What have we seen out of the Browns that tells us that they're going to be any better? I mean, the Browns are consistently there. It's like the Cowboys fans saying, "Oh man, it's the boys' year this year." It's like we're waiting for Cleveland to take a leap. They did. What was the year they went 11-5 and beat Ben Roethlisberger in the playoffs? I mean, that was so much fun to watch because it was brand new. It was like Cleveland's back, Baker's back, Baker is him. You know these. And they beat the brakes off of Ben, didn't they? It was like they had.
Yeah, it was over right from the start.
First play of the game was a defensive touchdown, correct?
Yeah.
But outside of that, I mean, that's got to be considered an anomaly season at this point. Well, maybe the next year Baker hurt his shoulder, didn't play for a couple of weeks. But what have we learned this offseason that will tell us that Cleveland is going to make a jump and will able to support both Amari Cooper and David Njoku as top 6? I mean, Amari Cooper's not a top 6 receiver, but I mean top 15 receiver and a then top 6 tight end. Oh no.
Is he frozen?
We may have lost him. But I mean that's sort of my point where I'm saying like Njoku can't in my opinion just not going to be the not a difference maker enough for me.
I totally get that.
Yeah.
I think we're just banking on Watson returning to that. Like he was in Houston, he was like an elite fantasy weapon.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like
Yeah.
shady passed aside, but it's one of those like, was it a rising tide lifts all ships? Like a rising Watson back to elite form could take this offense to new heights.
Yeah, and I think that's it's a fun argument to have there, because like I said, a fun Cleveland Browns team, like a good Cleveland Browns team, is fun for the entire league because the past has just been so abysmal. I don't mean to pile on here, Dane. No, I mean, it's just been so abysmal that when things are different, it's so much fun to watch for the league. It's better for the league. It's like when Texas is bad and like the University of Texas is bad in college football. It's better for the entire nation,
Those white helmets too.
Right. Yeah. The new jerseys.
The new ones, yeah.
To go back to the Browns past, I feel like that can be a trap, and I feel like that's I feel like that's the equivalent of helmet scouting, and sometimes it works out to you just look at certain teams or certain college programs, certain pro franchises, and history repeats itself sometimes, but I just feel like that's too much of a trap. And then I can't really it's another one of those things where it wouldn't surprise me if like the Browns offense comes out and just struggles like hell and we go, oh, same old Browns. Like that wouldn't surprise me, but I really can't give that. It's very, very lightweight kind of point when it comes to how I feel about what the future is going to hold and what I'm trying to predict for the future. So it's, I know it's like, if there's any team where that argument can work, it's probably the Browns. But I can't do it. I just feel like it's a trap.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I wanted to ask you, Dane, about Mike Gesicki, because he's on neither of our lists. I have been in one of my dynasty leagues. I've been riding with Mike Gesicki at tight end the last 2 seasons. It's either him or Irv Smith this year, and that's a sad place to be. Where are you at with Mike Gesicki here as a fringe anchor? I know he's only 27. New system this year, wasn't utilized under Mike McDaniels in Miami last year. So give me some logic behind this.
So Mike Gesicki's another one, has elite athleticism. What was that, about like a month and a half ago was the last time Mike Gesicki was brought up on the dive, because I got him in a trade from Wolf, and we dove into that athleticism. And for tight end, it's off the charts. But even for wide receiver, like the short area quickness kind of stuff, what is it? I can't remember the things right. The 3-cone drill, your 20-yard shuttle and stuff. Those are elite, high 90th percentile. But even for receiver, those came out to like 84th percentile, 80th percentile. And so you've got that elite athleticism. You had 1 year where it seemed like that athleticism was being taken advantage of in Miami in 2020, just before Jalen Waddle got there. Obviously, Tyreek wasn't there yet, and he was the tight end 7 per game. Not great, but I believe that was only his second year. We have the connection back with his college coach and Bill O'Brien. And we have Bill O'Brien, who likes to use a lot of 2 tight end sets. We have news that Gesicki is getting a lot of work with receivers in Patriots camp. And so we've all been kind of on the lookout for, we saw Wes Welker, we saw Julian Edelman, and we were always like, who is that next great New England slot receiver? And I'm not saying Gesicki's that next great slot receiver, but as much as he's been like split out wide before and utilized like a receiver, I feel like he's in a situation where the potential is there for him to break out, like legit break out. If he gets utilized in the passing game that complements that athleticism. Excuse me. And
God bless.
So that's enough for me to put him on the fringe. I'm buying upside here when I got him in a trade from Wolf. And it doesn't take, tight end's another one of these positions where they don't have to be world beaters in fantasy in general to be in your top 3 or 4 or 5 at the tight end position. Like, you look at the tight end, who was the tight end 2 last year? I think it was Mark Andrews. It was like 11.4 points per game. I think that comes out to like the wide receiver 20 something. So it doesn't break out for Mike Gesicki in the receiving game. Doesn't have to be as big as like a receiver. He doesn't have to break out like a running back in the running game, to crack the top 6, just being like elite. There's the positional scarcity is there to where Gesicki can I can see him doing like an 11 points per game kind of production. Now that you have an offensive coordinator calling the offensive plays in New England. Oh yeah, right. It was just like last year was crazy for New England's offense. Last year was crazy for Mike Gesicki's utilization in Miami, to where he just like really wasn't used in the receiving game.
Yeah, he lost 60 targets.
Yeah, like the McDaniel scheme.
Yeah,
wanted blocking tight ends, and so in New England you have your blocking tight end in Hunter Henry. That frees up Mike Gesicki some more to do his thing, out.
Play out wide. Yeah, he won't be in line. He'll be out wide. I mean, and that's what we saw in 2021, where Gesicki 112 targets, 73 receptions. He wasn't blocking at all. He wasn't doing anything. He was the primary red zone target in Miami's offense. Albeit there was no Tyreek Hill. Who they were rocking with Salvon Ahmed in the backfield, things like this. It was not great in Miami that season. Hence a new head coach coming in the year after. But he was the guy. He was the middle of the field receiver. He wasn't getting touched in terms of targets. And we saw that sort of come back down to earth after a different scheme. And I'm interested to see how Bill O'Brien will implement the Patriots sort of standard of the 2 tight end offense. Like you've said, we've seen him line up in the slot. We've seen him with the receivers in training camp so far. It's going to be really interesting. And as a Patriots fan, I hope you're right, buddy. I need some sort of flash on offense. And if it's a 6'6" white tight end, that's cool with me, man. It's gotta be something. That offense needs a jolt. Maybe Mike Gesicki's it. We'll see, hopefully. But you just never know.
Yeah, I feel like the opportunity's there. I mean, New England didn't really add, and what was it, Juju Smith-Schuster was their lone receiving upgrade, basically.
Yeah.
It's got to be one of the lower ranked receiving cores in the league, so there's not a lot of competition there. I mean, granted, they're probably still going to be a run-first offense unless O'Brien completely shifts everything somehow. I feel like they're just going to feed Ramondre like crazy.
Yeah.
But I mean, the opportunity is certainly there. Red zone opportunity, they were horrific in the red zone. So if he can fix those problems and be a touchdown machine, I could see it. I'm not going to bet on it, but it would be great for my mental health.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah.
This is another situation where I could see not really giving like a complete mulligan to the entire New England offense and Mac Jones last season, but like, yeah, the OC change is like, it was so weird what they did last year with that situation.
Oh, it's terrible.
That I'm willing to give a lot of breathing room to Mac Jones this year, and just to see what he can do, with better play calling and better scheming.
It's a big make or break it year, basically.
Yeah, for Mac, for Bill, for a lot of people in this organization.
Yep.
It was unfathomable what happened last season. It was the grossest sort of day. I saw some sort of tweet where it was like, it's really tough watching your team play shit football for 60 minutes and then on the 1:00 slate, and then have prime time Pat Mahomes going out there and absolutely tearing up. Like, the difference between offenses, any offense in the league last year and the Patriots offense. I mean, you could have gone out there and watched Kenny Pickett play better football than the Patriots did last year. I mean, that's just, and you can't say that as a Patriots fan. I mean, it's unacceptable.
Yeah. And as shitty as we're talking about the Patriots offense last year, this is a team that still went 8-9. So
right.
That's
could have yeah.
If the offense is as much better as we're kind of vibing it is right now, what is this, like an 11-12 win team? Just from that,
I mean, last year they could have been a 10-win team. I mean, Ramondre fumbled early or fumbled late against, I think,
it wasn't the
Steelers. Yeah, the Bengals, exactly. Ramondre fumbled inside the 10 against the Bengals.
The Raiders game.
The Raiders game? Are you kidding me? Yeah. I mean, this is probably like could have been a 10-win team, and we're sitting here telling like bottom 5 wide receiver class, no offensive coordinator. So I mean, if they injection of Mike Gesicki and an injection of like a legitimate across the middle threat, like between the hashes, playmaking receiver, guy with great hands, good. We've seen him be a phenomenal red zone tight end. It could be. You're totally right. You're bumping me up. I'm about to have a great evening tonight. I'm going to sit here and just think about this conversation all night. But like Jimbo said, I wouldn't bet on it. I think the joke on Twitter at least is, where do you find 7 wins on this Patriots?
Patriots
schedule. Yeah, second toughest in the entire league behind the Eagles. It's very tough. I would going into the bye week. I think they're week 9 bye. But I would not be surprised to see them 1-7 going into the bye. But that's not. It's not gonna. I mean, it's an insane schedule coming up. Have you looked at it either of you?
I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I remember when it came out, and I was like, "Oh, that doesn't look good."
I got it right here. Philly, Miami, Jets, Dallas, New Orleans, Vegas, Buffalo, Miami, Washington, Indianapolis. They're week 11 bye. So the first 10 weeks, maybe 3 wins, 3-7.
I could find you 3 to 5 wins in there, probably. My optimistic self.
Sure, yeah. I mean, but they're bound to blow one of them. It's like, hopefully you beat Indy, hopefully you beat Washington, hopefully you beat New Orleans, and hopefully you beat Vegas. And then everybody else, you're like, please be competitive, right?
Yeah.
I don't mean to make this a New England Patriots segment here, but
I think they can win one of those against the Dolphins. You know, as much as you want to say, like, which one are they going to drop out of the games they should win? Like, you should, like, you know, give them the benefit of the doubt, I think. And, you know, which one are they going to win that they probably shouldn't win too? So I think
they'll beat the Jets once too, you know. They'll beat the Jets.
Probably.
All right. That's enough Patriot talk there.
I did want to hit on George Kittle.
Had to do it.
Yeah.
We all have George Kittle on our list.
Yeah.
I found it kind of hard to even put George Kittle on this list just because we know the talent's there, but like going back the last 3 years, he's been maybe the most volatile tight end. And when we're talking about anchors, there's probably going to be a little more that we're going to have to contend with tight ends rather than the other positions, just because of the positional scarcity.
Yeah.
But man, like George Kittle, the tight end 3 last year. Let's just go through these numbers.
Yeah, I was about to say, I bet you could make the same case that I made against David Njoku, you know?
Maybe, because we go, he started in week 3 here, 4.8, 3.4, 5.2, right off the rip. Then you had 12.3, 18.8, 11.4. That's good. 2.6, 22.4, 4.1, 3.2, 4.8, and then another 23-point blow up, a 27-point blow up, 10.3, 16.9 to close out the season. So what is that like? We'll leave this here. Like, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games at 5.2 points or less out of what is this? Out of 15 games. And that's you go back through, you know, the years, like the most recent years here, the past 2 or 3. It's really the same story. And I don't know what his like last big, more consistent year was. I feel we might have to go back to like 2019 for that one.
It wasn't 2021.
Yeah.
Not 2020 was hurt all year. 2019 he missed 2 games, but played. Yeah, 2019 is it.
So we're talking about a guy who, like, you can't deny the talent, but this one's tough as far as the scheme goes. Like the 49ers scheme, now that you've got more talent maybe than you've ever had on the 49ers right now also, where you don't have to rely on one guy. But I feel like just the scheme in general, even if the skill positions weren't as talented as they are in San Francisco, like the scheme is not there. You know, another run-heavy scheme, kind of conservative, leaning on the yards after catch. And, like, you just don't see a lot of these blow-ups from 49ers players, where you had Deebo Samuel in 2021 was more the exception. That was more out of necessity because of injuries. But to another point to rebuttal that, the 49ers are injured as fuck just all the time. So, you know, you get a healthy George Kittle all year. You know, maybe it works out like that. But you know, it's not really something to bet on for sure. But like, I feel like he's like Brandon Ayuk was one of these guys that was really hard to, as talented as he is, to even put on the fringe at wide receiver. just because these guys seem capped by the scheme, which is quite a unique situation to be as successful of a franchise as San Francisco has been over recent history, to just like cap their players, like skill position players not named Christian McCaffrey right now, the way that it does. Like I look at this list of anchors right now, and I'm almost like, should George Kittle even be on here as a fringe guy?
That's a good point. I mean, to what you said, like McCaffrey's going to be their top option, and they love to run the ball, so he's going to be the guy. And then you still have Debo and Ayuk. So what is Kittle basically your fourth option? Like how confident can you be? It's got to be the position scarcity, because like how confident can you be in someone who's the fourth option on a run heavy offense with Brock Purdy under center? Like it just doesn't add up.
With Brock Purdy under center, he had a 14% target share. Debo was actually higher than McCaffrey, but both of those guys commanded 23% or more of the target share. Ayuk was third, and I mean it's like it's so hard. I mean that's a really talented group, but someone's got to be third and fourth, But to only be getting like between 10 and 15% of the entire target share of that offense. It's hard to expect the numbers that we expect out of George Kittle anymore, I think, at least.
And he's such a good blocker that it almost works to his detriment, because then they'll just be utilized like that even more than basketball.
That's the thing. George Kittle, the NFL player, is like elite, like an amazing blocker, amazing tight end. George Kittle, the fantasy player, no thanks.
Which is, it's kind of heartbreaking too, because we've seen the highs, so crave the highs like that. The ceiling George Kittle is very fun. So I don't know if we're gonna get that ever again, honestly.
Do either of you guys have anything else you want to talk about fringe wise? I know we all have Darren Waller in there. I had Dalton Schultz. I wonder. I think my main thing with Dalton Schultz is that I think he was propped up by Dak Prescott. I think he had some really awesome chemistry in Dallas, and they didn't have a second receiver. I mean, Michael Gallup was never it. T.Y. Hilton was a guy that they brought in to be a second receiver, and when you're doing that as an offense, that's never any good. So I think that Dalton Schultz was propped up a lot by Dak, but I do sort of like his opportunity in Houston to be a protection blanket for C.J. Stroud. Really accurate guy. Probably not the best offensive line in football down there in Houston. Gonna run the ball. What's up?
I think it's getting there though. They got 3 long-term guys there now on that line, so I think they're putting it together.
Sure. Okay. So then that works to my argument here as him being a fringe guy. If they do put it together, if they can protect C.J. Stroud, if they don't go out and make a huge splash next year, I know that next year's free agents wide receiver crop is really, really nice. If they don't go out and get C.J. Stroud a big name, Dalton Schultz should be there as a decent little protection, if break in case of emergency sort of guy. I wonder what you guys think.
I can see the path. The path's definitely there. Like similar to the New England talk, there's really no other options aside from my boy Nico Collins, who's ready to pop off this year.
Xavier Hutchinson, baby. No,
not John Mechie. Come on now.
I do like Mechie. Mechie's
definitely not tanked.
Definitely not Bobby Trees. That
well, I know for me, Schultz is, whenever I've seen Dalton Schultz, like Emery was saying, it's always been situation propping him up and Dak propping him up. Yeah. And I don't really think like Schultz could be, he has a path to be probably the highest target earner in the Texans offense this year, but like how good is the Texans offense going to be here in year one? I don't know. And so Schultz is like I feel like I can see a path to be like a fringe kind of anchor at the tight end position, but I feel like he fell into it in Dallas, and I feel like he would fall into it in Houston. So, and maybe that's like purely subjectivity. Me looking at it that way, but I feel like I think it was Dwayne McFarland, who I think still works with PFF. He says, like, what are fantasy players' outs for not having a good season? Like the guys who have less outs to have a good season are the ones you want to bet on. I feel like for Schultz, with the being propped up, like you were talking about with the potential free agent moves coming as early as like next season, or trades or whatever the Texans want to do with that offense. I feel like there's too many outs for Dalton Schultz not to be a reliable guy, even if he earns a pretty good target share this year in offense that's as good as CJ Stroud might become. This is all still very new. There's still going to be, as everybody goes through, growing pains, right? Like this is going to be a very growing pains type year for this offense, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. No, with Schultz, it feels like he's got a pretty good floor for like with the opportunity he's got, but compared to like the rest of the names on this fringe category, so like a Waller's, the Kittles, Goddard's, I feel like his ceiling is nowhere close to the rest of those guys. I feel like it's very capped.
And with Waller, I feel like his thing is just health. Like if it wasn't for the hamstring, I think he's on the anchor list there in the Giants now.
Yeah.
So would you rather go into the season with Mike Gesicki or Dalton Schultz as your tight end?
Ooh.
I think we know my answer. So.
Yeah.
I would have to go Schultz.
Would you take Njoku over any of those guys?
I'd probably Njoku by a hair.
See, I don't feel confident in it. It's so tight right there,
Yeah.
That's the absolute shit pile of tight ends that we've got here. It's like there's nothing. As a fantasy owner, there's nothing we can do at tight end if you don't have the two best.
Right. One of my teams last year had Njoku and Schultz, so I was back. It was a weekly game of who do I start, and it's like I can't do this again.
No
thank you.
That's not a good place to be.
No.
All right, we ready to do a little projections here, fellas?
I believe so. I'm bringing up Trey McBride's 2022 game logs as we speak here.
That's what I wanted to talk about first because I have zero idea about Trey McBride. I saw that both of you guys had them when I looked at my list and just sort of compared them to yours. I was like, Trey McBride, really? We're gonna go all in on a tight end from Arizona? Like,
we're also with our projections, like going 3 years down the road. I feel like there's going to be a lot of like gut feeling as far as these picks are concerned.
Sure. Yeah. I personally, I don't want anything to do with anyone related to the Arizona Cardinals franchise. Not a touch.
Well, we're talking about 3 years down the road where it's like we're talking about a lot can happen in 1 year.
Yeah.
How much can happen in 3 years?
And 3 years projecting for 6 down the road too, as anchors from now. Yeah. Okay. I follow there.
This was for me, it was to see how many. A lot of it was just how much he was on the field after Zach Ertz went down. You didn't see a snap share below 73%. And then as high, you got a couple in the 90s, three games in the 80s. And then you had for a rookie tight end, you had coming out of the gate, I think his last 5 games, he saw 5.6 targets, which ain't great. But again, we're talking about a rookie tight end in a position where I think we can all agree that, sometimes it takes a while. So Here's the first guy who was the first tight end taken off the board in 2022. So yeah, there's a lot of things pointing up for McBride right now, and we know Zach Ertz was he like 32 or 33 now. So 3 years down the road, we're not thinking about Zach Ertz. Are we really expecting them to bring in another tight end to take over for McBride at some point, or be like not even take over for like a guy who will like split snaps 50-50 with McBride? Like it could happen, I guess, but I feel like there's enough invested in him at this point, as far as like just draft capital, like I said, being the first guy off the board last year, and then just to see how much he was on the field and utilized even just as a rookie tight end last season with shit quarterbacks. Like these are, yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of projecting going on with McBride, but again, we're talking about 3 years down the road. How much like rock solid metrics are we trying to apply here when we're talking 3 years down the road when a lot can change?
Yeah, it's for me putting McBride on there. Just the opportunity. We're all assuming Ertz is going to be gone by then.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more so just the opportunity of being the tight end one with a Kyler, or if they go a different route next couple of years, with the, like Danny mentioned, the draft capital, where he was the first tight end selected, the athleticism. I just feel like there's a lot of factors working in his favor. To Emery's point, though, you are right. Like that organization is disgusting. So that can kind of deter us a bit here, but I'm one to bet on the talent and the opportunity that I see in the future with McBride.
Okay.
I mean, we're talking about the Arizona organization right now, but
yeah,
things can change a lot. And, yeah, so I'm not really putting a lot of stock in the franchise's current state when we're talking about 3 years down the road.
Yeah, they do have the best odds to get the first overall pick this year, so we shall see.
And I mean, maybe like the best question of the night, who do you guys got right now, Kincaid or Baby Gronk? In 3 years, who are we talking about more?
How old is Baby Gronk? Do we know?
I think he's like 11. I don't know.
That kid's gonna get stuffed into lockers in 3 years.
Yeah,
the rate that father keeps.
Dan, you don't want that. You don't want that. How old is Baby Gronk's search coming up in your history, pal? You know.
Right. Definitely, maybe the most interesting point on today's show.
Right.
Thank you. Any more like anti-Trey McBride arguments here? Because I'm definitely here for it.
No, I had nothing anti about it. I just I honestly have zero clue about the kid. I know he was drafted as an Ertz replacement, hopefully. Because they traded midseason for Ertz, but then he went absolutely nuclear when was tight end 2 or 3 for the last half of that season. Drafted to become the guy in 3 years. So that's what this whole conversation here is about. It makes a lot of sense what you're thinking, but I personally don't have enough knowledge to really dig in on that.
Yeah, anchor might be a stretch. I mean, I feel like most of these guys on my list will probably fit into that fringe category.
Yeah.
It's a huge leap to assume that this guy is going to end up in like the Andrews and the Hawkinsons talk.
Sure.
Like
yeah,
that's a very sizable jump.
Mm-hmm. A guy you left off, Dane. Did you have more points there? I'm sorry.
Well, I was kind of going to go into. So are there any anti-Dalton Kincaid arguments here for somebody that we're projecting to be like a rock solid anchor? Because I mean, I don't really have him. You got a first round draft capital, and we know he's going to be utilized more than Dawson Knox.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if like I'm still not, like off the ship on Gabe Davis. I think injury might have played a good amount of why he struggled last year. So I'm still kind of taking a wait and see approach on him. But yeah, so far everything we with Dalton Kincaid, it's like, why not project this guy to be an anchor in 3 years? But like, do we all are we all like? It's hard to put like a rate of 1 to 10 how much you think he's going to be an anchor, but like, are either of you guys like definitely locked in? Because I'm not like definitely locked into Dalton Kincaid, but there's been too much to make me think, like why not this guy?
Yeah, too much buzz.
There's a lot of buzz when you're getting compared. I mean, it's obviously not a direct comparison, but he's getting put in the same sentence as Travis Kelce in terms of like over the middle or like seam routes or just the effortless catches that he makes and then the yards after catch. That's a big comparison, but when you're put in that kind of scenario, like you're probably gonna do pretty well.
When I saw that we all had Dalton Kincaid on here, I sort of like I wanted to like think about what Buffalo's plan is moving forward, right? Stephon Diggs has got 2 or 3 years of his peak sort of level, his level that he's playing at right now. But you'd have to think that, especially with the AFC East getting better, and like we talked about before, the crop of receivers going to free agency, going to that second contract, and perhaps they don't re-sign with the team or a team doesn't want to sign them, I would be hard-pressed to think that Buffalo doesn't go after a guy like, say, a Jerry Jeudy, a Michael Pittman. Who's got another deal coming up? There was one other big one that I saw. T. Higgins, yeah, like a guy like T. Higgins. If they know that Stephon Diggs is approaching that twilight, it would just make sense that Buffalo has to put all the chips in, especially with Josh Allen coming into his own. He now is a perennial MVP candidate. I personally think Buffalo is going to have to make one of these type of moves where they do that. And then Diggs can sort of ride it out, let his contract go. But then you just seamlessly transition in Buffalo to maybe 3 years from now, where you've got a maxed out T. Higgins or a more refined, more mature Jerry Jeudy, and then another Dalton Kincaid right next to him. I think that has to be the sort of idea that Buffalo is going for, and it's a scary thought, especially being a Pats fan, because there's no end in sight. It's going to be like this for the next 10 years, where the Pats are going to be the fourth option in that AFC East. But I see no reason why Buffalo shouldn't do something along those lines. At least strengthen their youth foundation in that sense, right alongside Kincaid, to work with Josh Allen. I don't know what you guys think about that, but when I saw that all of us had the same guy on here, that's where my thought went first.
It feels like they're already under a ton of pressure to, actually do something in the postseason. So yeah. I would 100% expect a big signing like that to be in the near future. So they have to do something. So they're going to get desperate, and they'll make a big signing. It's like, we have to do this now.
Yeah, and I think that only benefits Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah,
I think with Dawson Knox on the roster, it's going to be a timeshare no matter what. Kincaid's going to get his looks. He's going to be split out wide in like a Gesicki style. But he's still a rookie tight end in the NFL. Going to take some bumps and bruises along the way. But 3 years from now, this kid is as close to an anchor from this class as we can sort of project.
I think we've seen enough from Josh Allen to where even if, say, a few years down the road, if they kind of keep him his running and try to cap it just to keep him healthy, he's still shown enough as a passer to keep that offense humming.
Yeah.
As far as so if we look at Emery's list here, Sam Laporta, Greg Dulcich, Pat Fryermuth, are these guys that you project as anchors, or like Jimbo was saying kind of about his list, are these more like, well, are these like more fringe guys, or are these locked in guys here?
Pat Fryermuth, 100%. I think he is the next sort of guy in line. You know, we're talking about young tight ends in the league. We've got Pitts and Hawkinson are the two, like the 1 and the 2 in terms of like young tight ends. I honestly think Fryermuth should be the third one right there. He, in a season last year with a rookie quarterback and Mitch Trubisky at the helm, Pat Fryermuth was tight end 8, and he did that on, on 98 targets, almost 12 yards per catch, and only 2 touchdowns. He was tight end 8 with only 2 touchdowns on the season. I mean, the guy gets the ball in a crowded wide receiver room, in a very productive wide receiver room, and like we said, a rookie quarterback who jumped in week 4, week 5 last season. He's only balled out as a young tight end in the league. He's the next. I mean, Pittsburgh got another great pass catcher. It's like they do their research. It's like they draft correctly. You know, I think out of all of these lists, everybody under him is Dolchich and Laporta, probably fringe guys. They're going to have some great seasons, no doubt. But Fryermuth is, I'm big on Fryermuth moving forward.
Yeah, definitely love Fryermuth. Shout out to our own Keegs. Pretty sure Keegs went to high school with him, or they grew up in like the same area. So, little fun fact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but he's 24 years old, and he's had 2 top 15 tight end finishes. He did 98 targets, only 2 touchdowns last year. If he had 5 touchdowns last year, I would imagine that he's tight end 5, tight end 6. You know, if he has 8 touchdowns this year, he's tight end 4, maybe. You know, that's a guy that this sort of production, I doubt that he'll be sitting at 100 targets a year for the next 6 years. But if he can get anywhere from like 50 to 60 receptions, 5 to 7 touchdowns a year, that's top 10 tight end every single week. You know, I think that's hard to beat.
Yeah, I guess I'm not really as far as Fryermuth, I'm not sure what was keeping me off this list besides just thinking of I'm definitely agree that in 3 years down the road he could be a fringe guy. I'm just not quite I guess not quite sure about Kenny Pickett. I would think over the next 3 years that offense is going to rise, even if it's not by a lot. It should, Pickett should get better. As well coached and stable as that organization has been, Kenny Pickett's in a really good spot to improve. So he does have that going for him, maybe more than really just most franchises. Just the ability to, have his talent fostered and honed in. So I think the bigger question for me is, as far as tight end anchors go, like it's kind of one of those things where a lot of guys can get hype, but like not everyone's going to make it. And so I'm not here to disagree that in 3 years Pat Fryermuth will be like top 6, but he's just one of those guys to look at, and I just think like I feel like I even now want to see a little more, even though what we've seen projects really nicely for the future. Fryermuth is much still a wait and see, and it's not like there's not like a lot that I'm pointing to other than just like not everyone can make the list kind of vibe for me. But definitely a fringe guy in 3 years. No arguments there. So just that next level, I'm just like, because the Steelers have had good tight ends in the past. Like you think of like a Heath Miller. I think Heath Miller was always a very good tight end, but I'm not sure fantasy wise that he was always like one of these guys that you could set him and forget him, and he's never going to lose you, or he's not going to lose you many weeks. I don't know if he was I don't know if he was like that. So maybe like I want to do some Heath Miller research and then project him for my Pat Fryermuth maybe here. But it's kind of like that. It's like it's not going to be, this is Pittsburgh where, Ben Roethlisberger was like throwing 5-yard passes all day at the end of his career, but I don't know if that's what Pittsburgh necessarily wants to do. Are they going to be one of these franchises moving forward, leaning on the run, leaning on their defense to where you're not going to have, a big aerial attack? And who else are they going to add besides, Deontay, George Pickens? What's that wide receiver room going to look like in 3 years? I just feel like it's very much fringe, very much fringe vibe for me. So if we're talking about a list of fringe anchors 3 years from now, Pat's definitely on there.
I think that's splitting hairs. If we're talking fringe anchors 3 years from now, that's a little bit. That's a little bit much. Yeah. But you forgot to mention that Allen Robinson is in that room too. So we have to talk about Allen Robinson every episode. Here. That is in our contract with Wolf. Every episode we need to talk about.
Yes.
Yeah.
You guys free for the next
immediately terminated.
You guys free for the next hour and a half?
Yeah. I saw that you, Jimbo, had Michael Mayer. I thought his case is so interesting because he was the far and away the tight end one coming pre-draft, sort of like in the whole dynasty realm. He was honestly maybe not in Superflex leagues, but in 1QB leagues he was sitting right around that 109 to 112 sort of rookie draft pick. It's never good to burn a rookie draft pick on a tight end in the first round. But I mean, that's sort of where he was sitting. He was expected to be out of Notre Dame, the number one tight end off the board. He ended up being the third one. So I think he found a really awesome landing spot in Vegas. I think that's going to be a great spot, especially with Jimmy G coming in now. I think that he's going to get peppered with those sort of just check down style stuff. I think that McDaniels is going to, for as long as he can keep a job, I think McDaniels is going to keep him on the field and keep him part of that offense. I was very close to adding Michael Mayer to this list as well.
Yeah, I definitely drank the Kool-Aid when it came to the, he's one of the best pure tight end prospects in a while, overall as the tight end position. I definitely drank the Kool-Aid with that, and I have some shares of him early, so I'm definitely biased when it comes to that. It's probably just I'm really hoping that this works out because
sure, right? Yeah. And you're the only one that has Chig. He was another Twitter Reddit darling that we get.
Oh yeah.
Every year, a guy pops up and he's and then is the talk of the entire summer. And that's Chig. I don't know if I've bought in completely, but Tennessee's revamped their offense. They've given Ryan Tannehill the best sort of targets that he's had in years. And he's now surrounded by some legitimate football players. There's no reason why Chig can't be at least a stepping stone for Tannehill to either Malik Willis or Levis, whoever wins that job. I mean, it's probably it's so up in the air at the moment right now. But to go from Hopkins, maybe 1 or 2 years of post prime but not decrepit DeAndre Hopkins and rising tight end, it's a decent situation for Tennessee at the moment. I think they're getting a lot of shit right now. Tannehill's going undrafted in even in a lot of Superflex stuff on DraftKings, on Underdog, on a lot of stuff like that. So it's interesting to see, and I can't put Chig in my list at the moment, but next year is going to be fun to watch, to keep an eye on him.
Yeah, it definitely feels like more of a long-term potential kind of thing, and the Hopkins signing definitely hurts his ceiling a little bit. He's Hopkins is going to take so many of those targets away, which kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But just like the limited production that he had, and I think it's Scott Barrett. One of the big fantasy guys, like all over Chig, just like his yards after catch and all, just it was insane. So it seems like more of a long-term project, but it from the looks of it and the limited time that we got with Chig last year, like you can see the path that where he could reach that next step.
Sure. Yeah.
I think for me, it was more like for leaving Chig off the list. I don't have a lot of faith in the Tennessee front office right now. I feel like their 23 draft was really weird. Not a big Levis guy. You're in a spot where you got to start thinking about your a Derrick Henry replacement, and they went out and got a guy in Tajay Spears who like doesn't have any knees or something. Like it was very weird, and I think a lot of that goes into my thinking about the future of this offense. So, Jake has a path. In 3 years, we're not talking about DeAndre Hopkins, but we gotta be talking about somebody on the other side of the field, opposite of Traylon Burks at receiver, right? Like you can't have who was it, Nick Westbrook-Ikeen? Who is this guy? I think there's like a tweet of like everybody, all the receivers on the Titans roster behind, Traylon Burks. And this was like after the draft. I'm like, what are you guys doing out here? Yeah. Like you have only. Is this his age 30 season?
I think it is. It's right around there.
Time to strike, man. What are they doing? Like they get DeAndre Hopkins, but it's like, man, we're so late in the offseason to the point where it's like I feel like Hopkins kind of like fell into Tennessee almost. Like it's just the vibe I'm getting out of how they're running the team there is not giving me much hope for the future. I mean, he's Malik Willis. He might be out of the league here in like 1 or 2 years or something, right? Who's going to be after Tannehill? Is it going to be Will Levis? Because but again, it goes back to not everyone can be successful. So when I look at clearly when you look at the 2023 draft class, it's the NFL at large was also kind of looking at Will Levis and going like, yeah, I don't know about this guy, but Tennessee went with him. So I feel like, yeah, I went and traded for the 102 so I could pick up Richardson. I know full well Richardson can bomb. I know how low that floor is, but like Levis's floor is there too, and I'm not sure that he has a ceiling quite like Anthony Richardson, not just in fantasy, but just as an NFL player. So, as it's weird to, maybe put Chig on a different NFL roster. Like I don't know how many different NFL rosters, and my tune might change quite a lot. Just for some reason, Tennessee's just I'm getting bad vibes out of that organization here this past season.
Yeah, that AJ Brown trade should basically be example A of what's going on over there.
And they got rid of, who was it, John Robinson, their GM? They got rid of John Robinson, kind of that was the last straw or something like that. But then they have this 2023 draft. It's like, where did it's like you guys got rid of John Robinson to do this? Like it's a continuation for me, even after they canned their GM after that AJ Brown trade.
With a draft full of impact skill players through the first 4 rounds, I mean, and they go out and take a running back who can't run. It's tough to do. Sort of job description there, pal. Yeah.
Worse knees than Todd Gurley. I don't know.
Do we have
Did
any?
Talk about Brock Bowers at all? I think he's the last one here that we haven't talked about. Really, Brock Bowers. So I haven't even been thinking about him like that. I guess maybe I should do.
I said the same thing before the show started. I hadn't thought about him in this sense, but if he's the guy that the SEC, all these people on Twitter and the nation's telling me that this guy is the real deal, then he's he's getting enough hype for sure.
Yeah, I think he was any like mock early rookie draft that you look at. I think he's in like that 105-ish range for most of them. So if you're that high as a tight end, like you got to be pretty special. Like I know we just
Absolutely.
saw Pitts as like who's the generational talent tight end, and then it feels like Bowers is coming in there like this is a tight end like we've never seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Yeah, our sample size is 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He probably should be on this list. You know, he probably should be on the anchor.
Might as well be.
Yeah, I don't care about Georgia football that much, so I don't.
Yeah, I don't. Zero knowledge.
Yeah, don't have as much knowledge to talk on it, but if everybody if everyone's speaking truthfully about Brock Bowers, then he probably he's got a good decent idea to be on this list.
It's hype though. You can't put out any hype that isn't true. I think so that covers everybody. I know we came into this, being like, yeah, tight ends is going to be a short list. Got a lot of guys that we covered here, but why not? The more talk, the merrier. I mean, listen, this is not just talking redraft here. We're talking dynasty, where you just there's just a load of players to keep track of, and a lot to dive into, regardless at any moment in the off season, during the season, whatever. So.
Mm-hmm.
Glad we dove into all these guys. I think we're ready to talk about like a 16 asset trade package now, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So we can see the dates are on here, but we're talking about tight end anchors. So top of list, obviously, is Travis Kelce, and so what are these dates here? So in the RSJ Superflex Dynasty League, you had myself, you had Jimbo. Our teams were in a little bit of my team was a contender last year, both of ours, me and Jimbo. And as I said in other episodes, I watched 3 contenders, including Jimbo, bolster their 2023 rosters. Jimbo went and got Derrick Henry. Jackson Barrett went and got Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, and then Kendall Brown went and got T.J. Hawkinson. So in Kendall's case, that was more of a long-term bolster. I considered the other 2 guys to be more like short-term kind of bolstering for 2023. And I looked at my own team, and I went, I don't know. Now I don't know if I can do this with this team. And I made the decision to kind of pivot to a strategy that I think some would call unwise, because you're either contending or you're rebuilding, and those spot you don't really want to be is that middling kind of area where you're not good enough to win anything, but then like you're not getting great draft capital high end first round either. But that's kind of where I decided to go in a big sense. Already didn't have much draft capital, so I was focusing on getting younger where I thought the value was good. And so one trade, I don't know if this is the first trade that really kicked that off for me. February 22nd, 2023. I don't know how long we might have been talking about this one, but Jimbo sent me Geno Smith, Darren Waller, Daniel Jones, Javonte Williams, and a 2025 first rounder for Travis Kelce, Dak Prescott, Dalvin Cook, a 2024 third, 2025 second. That was the first one there. You had just over a month later, I went and bothered Jimbo again for some Marquise Brown action, and I sent him his, or rather, he sent me. So that's not the same 2025 second. All right, so a little tweak there. It doesn't really make a big difference. But I thought that was the same 2025 second, but it doesn't look like it. It looks like I got Marquise Brown and his 2025 second. Shipped off Mike Evans, Sterling Shepard, Rashad Penny, and that time a 2024 first. So I took away the 2025 second, called it more or less equal, just to make it a little simpler here. Zoom in. those two trades combine for this package right here. Daniel Jones, Geno Smith, Javonte Williams, Marquise Brown, Darren Waller, and a 2025 first. For Dak Prescott, Dalvin Cook, Rashad Penny, misspelled, Mike Evans, Sterling Shepard, Travis Kelce, 24 first, 24 third. So this, much like the big trade between me and Emery right after the 2021 season started, that catapulted me into a rebuild and catapulted him into contendership, this one was big as far as sending me into this retooling mode, not really a rebuild, more of a retooling mode, and then further solidified Jimbo as a contender. And on our very first episode, me and Emery were talking about what kind of stage are these teams in for the RSJ Dynasty League. We labeled Jimbo a troubled contender was the technical term that we labeled Jimbo's team, which we can get looking into. Just basically the age cliff. We feel like Jimbo's team, I think, is the closest one to the age cliff. And these couple of trades that you look at combined here didn't help. But we can go back. We can go over and look at Jimbo's team to see just how stacked he is for this season. But like we have our unbiased third party here in Emery, and so I kind of just want to leave the floor to you about where you want to start with all of this shit right here. Mute. You're on mute.
Got it. Thank you.
All right.
So what I'm seeing is that Dane, you got far younger. Dalvin Cook is not currently signed to an NFL team at the moment. Mike Evans is going into his year at least 29, and Travis Kelce is the same. I think Travis Kelce is 30. Daniel Jones is younger than Dak Prescott, but we have gotten what we're seeing here from you is, like you said, you're getting younger. You need to do this, and you didn't get younger at the sake of just younger players to be younger. Marquise Brown, Javonte Williams, Daniel Jones had a great year last year. Marquise Brown is going to be a target hog with Hopkins gone, no matter who is at quarterback in Arizona, and in the long term, hopefully when they turn it around and get a quarterback, maybe it's Caleb Williams, maybe it's Trey Lance, maybe it's, I don't know, someone in that range. I mean, and I also think Darren Waller is a huge candidate for a better role. He's obviously the best receiving option there in New York, and I think the Daniel Jones stack with him is going to be pretty fun to watch. And then for Jimbo, it's like you said, you have guys on your team that are true difference makers. I know Dak gets a lot of shit. Dak is a top 10, 12 quarterback in the league, in my opinion. Rashad Penny probably didn't know it at the time, but was going to be an RB1 in Philly.
News today, right?
Yeah, first snap. Alongside, we should make note, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was also the first running back to touch the ball in Kansas City.
Right. Yeah, it's my boy.
So it's good. It's good news. We got good news out here. And Mike Evans too. I mean, we talked about it ad nauseum last week. Mike Evans has not had 1,000 yards receiving, and we got it's to the point where, like, if show me you're not going to do it first. I mean, he hasn't. There's no evidence that Mike Evans is going to slow down. He's seen Tom Brady at quarterback. He's seen Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback, and he's seen, Jameis Winston. There's that's sort of a big sort of like talent difference there. And he's performed every single time. I think Mike Evans is he's sneaky top five receivers of the last, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, and he's going to continue at that level until until we're shown that he can't. And then you get Travis Kelce. I mean, that's speaks for itself. The ability to have a 4-point, it's basically like you're starting with at least 4 points over your tight end. You can chalk Travis Kelce up for at least 10 points, non-PPR, PPR, whatever you want to do. He is 4 points better than any other position out there. And so it really comes down to, and what Dane and I wanted to talk to when we introduced this this sort of show that we're doing here, is that you can put numbers up, you can put trades up, you can put assets up, and they are all so subjective. You need to know more of the context around people's teams, around moves and why they were made. But this is as close to a win-win trade as we can see. Certainly Jimbo gave up a lot of youth, but returns a first-round pick that will be I mean, you've said it yourself, Dane, that you're theoretically stuck in the middle of our league here. So you're hoping to draft anywhere below this, anywhere between 5 and 8 in the rookie draft. That's nothing to sneeze at. And return Travis Kelce. I mean, you're certainly giving up a lot, but you're getting a lot in return for both of you guys. So like I said at the beginning of the show, I can't tell you who won this. I mean, it would be great to see Jimbo go out there and win a championship or come in second to me this year. That would be pretty cool.
Anyone but Jackson.
Anyone but Jackson. I mean, yeah, I think we both voted, and we said you were a troubled contender at the beginning of the season. I think Dane said he said everyone has their vices, and I think Jimbo's maybe late round draft picks. And he said it is much to his own fault that your team is older and sort of aging stars. And then he said that was his fault. So we can point some fingers there, and that's why we're talking now. We did bring up the fact that, say, you have 6 guys right here: Chubb, Henry, Cook, Evans, Lockett, Kelce. If they're out of relevance in 2 years, then what do you do? Do you trade Josh Allen for the moon? Do you do that? I think that coming from this, there has to be some sort of return. You finished second in the regular season this year, couldn't make it to the championship last year, and there's got to be some sort of return, right? It's got to become fruitful at some point.
Yeah, I mean, the what's the word I'm looking for? The narrow-minded view would be, it's future me problem to figure out in 2 or 3 years. Just push all the chips in now and see what happens. But yeah, I mean, like you said, if it comes to that and they're all relevant, like the Garrett Wilsons, the Josh Allens, am I going to have to start dangling those out to, trade one guy for multiple assets in order to rebuild? That's probably going to have to be the move, unfortunately.
Yeah. And for you, Dane, you're sitting at a roster with a lot of promise. I think my notes for you, Dane, were you were your Reddit's favorite roster here. I think you had a lot of guys that were huge on Reddit. I mean, we got Anthony Richardson, Breece Hall, Marquise Brown, Gino, Daniel Jones, Elijah Moore. See, we're going through Njoku.
Elijah Moore.
We're just looking. Kadarius Toney. We're just looking and we're looking and we're looking. I mean, is it in the same vein of me saying to Jimbo, what are the expectations, or what has to happen for you to continue on this route? Where are you, Dane, in saying this team is a championship contender in 2 years? How do you take that big step next? It would start by cutting Zach Wilson, but
so there's too much up in the air with this team. I'm not RB1 Cordero Patterson. This is, I feel like me and Jimbo are sort of on the opposite ends of the spectrum to where I kind of think exit strategy for Jimbo. What's the exit strategy? I'm very curious to see. We've already started to see it. Right, we could bring up the trade. What was the trade exactly for Travis Etienne? Because that, when we first did the episode talking about the team stages, you didn't have Travis Etienne yet. Shout out to D'Lo if he's still watching. He was there at the beginning. I saw that, but that was Etienne. That you got Etienne. You gave away a 2024 first. There was another piece to that, right?
It was basically ETN for the first and Roshan Johnson, and then we swapped like a third next year and a third in like 2 years, I think it was.
Okay, because we already kind of started to see the exit strategy that I've been curious to keep track of. Is like how you never want to put yourself, back yourself into a corner in Dynasty, and I feel like Jimbo's team was probably the closest to reaching that point where, say these older guys do fall off in 2 years, now are you not just looking for a rebuild, but like how long-term does that rebuild become kind of thing? Because we're talking about that kind of age. But now that's been that concern has been quelled. I guess not a lot. There's still I think work to be done as far as like making sure you have enough breathing room to be comfortable. It's like, okay, I don't have to worry about the age cliff anymore. But now you have one 2024 first as opposed to two. That was one of the things I was looking at in particular. Is like, is he going to keep those? First round rookie picks aren't necessarily starters. Now you have a guy in ETN who I think is, man, I gotta go back. I can't remember exactly. I think I have him on my anchors list for running back. So another plug him in, 3+ year guy. 3 years down the road, these other guys, like Evans and Kelce and probably Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry's probably falling off a cliff too. Like now you have ETN there, who I think is a long-term locked-in guy, and so, what else? What else is like on the docket? I guess is what I'm going to be looking for the future. Like how else? What other moves are going to be made to kind of get out of this concern as far as the age cliff goes? And I think it's still there. Made one move to quell that concern, and whereas I'm like very much wait and see. I don't know what I'm doing yet. Got to see these guys play it out for 1 or 2 years. Probably 2. Like I don't know if 1 year is good enough for Jordan Love, for Anthony Richardson, for maybe just those guys. The other guys, you can probably get a good grip on what their future is going to look like after 1 year. But like, Love's got some growing pains to do even in his 4th year. We were looking at the stats with Aaron Rodgers and how Aaron Rodgers he went 6-10 his first year starting, and then his 2nd year starting was when things really took off. So even if Jordan Love kind of craps the bed, maybe not craps the bed, but doesn't have a great year, I think the jury's still probably going to be out on him as far as I'm concerned. So particularly with my two QBs here, Richardson and Jordan Love, very much wait and see. Obviously, Trey Lance is wait and see as much as anybody. So, whereas I'm kind of not really looking for a particular strategy with my own team, looks pretty set in stone with Jimbo's, and definitely curious to see what the future is going to hold. I don't really know how much more we can dive into without talking about like who you're looking for in trades and stuff. I don't want to like.
Yeah, we don't need to blow your spot up, dude.
But like what is if I had to think of like the big question that I would want to hear from Jimbo about this particular team, this particular situation, about having a team approaching an age cliff. maybe it's just a general one. Like, what is your not just what is your strategy? Because obviously you want to get younger quality guys where you can, but like just I guess any more general commentary. Because as far as just strategy goes, like what does somebody do in this particular situation as a contender who's approaching an age cliff?
Yeah. So pretty much going into this whole offseason, I guess, like I felt really good about this starting lineup. Like it was probably gonna do pretty well. But my bench, there was like it was all old veterans that had nothing. So trading for ETN plugs a small hole in the running back room for a little bit. That's still a big area of work to get younger in. And then the move sending was it Keegs, Miles Sanders, and like a third to get a first so I could draft JSN. I wanted to get a really quality young receiver that I can possibly pair with Wilson as like the two receivers going forward. So little moves like getting Darnell Mooney. I mean, that's not going to move the needle anywhere, but it's like when your bench receivers are, well, it was like Josh Reynolds and like 30-year-old crap. Like I just wanted to get some young receiver talent in there. So Mooney, Nico Collins, just some young guys that have a little bit of upside that like break glass in case of emergency maybe. But there's still work to do in terms of getting quality young talent in there without sacrificing a win now mode to try and take down Jackson.
And I thought the Sanders one was really interesting because at the time when you had Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, and Dalvin Cook, you had Miles Sanders, who was really like a fourth starting caliber running back on your team, and he was the youngest one. And so I looked at him like, man, this guy's already old. Now he's just kind of made his starting running back room even older. But when we look at Jackson, Smith, and Jigba, I feel like there's this it's an outside chance, I would say. But I do have concern about how he's going to be utilized in that offense. We're all here to buy talent, but Seattle was a very interesting landing spot, I thought. Just for the coaching philosophy there. I think if we're going back to a year ago, we all might have guessed that Pete Carroll was on the outs in Seattle and that team wasn't going to be very good in 2022. And then like the script flipped basically from where a lot of people thought the Seahawks and the Broncos were going to be for 2022. So Pete Carroll's still there, likes to run the ball, established the run. Seattle's been very didn't seem like they were historically prioritizing the wide receiver position. And you kind of had these guys come out like Doug Baldwin and Tyler Lockett, who were not like I forget where Tyler Lockett was drafted. I know Doug Baldwin was undrafted, but you really saw the last couple of years them start to invest here in the wide receiver position. First round capital in the wide receiver position, very out of the norm for the Pete Carroll era in Seattle. So, if there's one thing to point at in particular, if you like draft capital, like seems like they're really going to want to utilize the guy because of that draft capital. But I still kind of have these leftover vibes from knowing how the Seahawks utilized receivers in the Pete Carroll era over like the past decade or so. That makes me wonder if they're gonna not as bad as a Kyle Pitts, but like are they gonna keep JSN's production capped just by like scheme and how they want to run the offense? Is that a big concern for you, Jimbo?
Not entirely. I mean, the only concern I have now is just there's so many mouths to feed.
Yeah.
So it is nice to have JSN and both Lockett on my roster. I mean, it's probably going to be a headache, but I'm just assuming when Lockett either retires or goes anywhere else and JSN just slides right in that wide receiver 2 spot, aside from DK, like the sky's the limit. Dude's a freak.
How big are you on Rashad Penny? Because for me, trading away Rashad was less about how I think he's going to do the next 1 or 2 years, and more just about I'm trying to get younger on my own team. So, I mean, I haven't put a whole lot of thought into how well I think Penny's going to do this year, just because I haven't really had to. So, like, what are your thoughts on Penny here?
I love Penny. He just can't stay on the field, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And I'd like him a lot more if DeAndre Swift wasn't there.
Sure.
Who also can't stay on the field, apparently. But I did see a tweet today, Scott Barrett. He's like, the only player thread I've ever made or had on Twitter was for Rashad Penny. So if he's in my corner, then I feel pretty confident about that. So
Yeah, I'm excited to see what the combo Penny and Sanders does, because Philly didn't really have a receiving back last year. It was you either threw the ball to Goddard, Smith, or AJ Brown, or you ran the ball with Miles Sanders or Jalen Hurts. There wasn't that. They've added another aspect to their offense. I wonder what it will take from, and who sort of becomes that like cut bait when the sort of a passing back comes into that system. I'm interested to see that. But Rashad Penny Miles Sanders had his most productive year behind the same offensive line with the same assets around him. And if Miles Sanders can be a Pro Bowler, then Rashad Penny can be a Pro Bowler too.
Are you willing to get hurt?
What's up, Dane?
Said, are you willing to get hurt again?
No, I am personally going to stay as far away from those two cats as I can. But more power to the Rashad Penny fans. I don't have anything against him. Just
yeah, I mean, I like to see him be healthy. For
yeah,
sure.
of course. Yeah,
I want to see the Rashad Penny.
Will I put my eggs in that basket? No, thank you. No, my eggs are staying.
It's like Adam Dunn. You're just swinging for the fence. You're probably going to strike out, but if you hit it, it's going 450.
Yeah.
Any particular players on the whole package to the right here? Like Jimbo, is there one player in particular that you wanna call out and talk about out of this list here? Yeah.
I will say one thing I've noticed, the first initial trade that we did, I mean, that was back in February. Mm-hmm. And I think if you take out Kelce, like literally the stock of every player you got went up and mine went down. So like Geno, they talked about Seattle drafting a quarterback in the first round. They went the opposite and got a receiver. So he's up. Waller went to the Giants where he's going to be the guy. So he's up. Daniel Jones got a guy, so he's up. And Javonte, I didn't think he was going to recover in time. Or I thought he'd be like out for the beginning of the season, whatever. And they're like, oh, yeah, he'll be ready for week 1. So he's up.
I don't know how much stock I put in that, though, either. I mean, we're still talking ACLs here.
That's true. Yeah. Dak lost his offensive coordinator, and Dalvin Cook no longer is employed. So this is quite the swing.
Someone's going to sign him, yeah.
Favorites.
I mean, so like Kareem Hunt's still like a free agent. He seemed to just kind of fall off. And I know that Dalvin Cook was less efficient last year, but like
he's still good.
Still a 1,000-yard rusher.
Yeah.
So that was a crazy one.
A lot can happen. Javonte Williams goes. I'm not really sure what I don't have like very specific projections or anything for Javonte Williams long term. Still very much a wait and see. Now that Sean Payton's in Denver, so like, I'm curious to know what kind of long term thoughts you had about Javonte Williams. Not just like the fact that he'll play week 1 this year. Not really, definitely long term thoughts about Javonte. How well do you think that's going to go for somebody who was like at the what was his highest ranking on like Keep Trade Cut at one point, like RB3? Like it was kind of crazy.
Probably 3rd, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like now, especially with Sean Payton, I feel like that's going to do wonders for him. He can be that like Kamara I don't know, maybe I shouldn't compare him to Kamara, but like was it week 1 or 2 last year where he had like 12 catches?
Mhm.
Like if you're in a Sean Payton offense and you're just getting dump after dump after dump, like you're
Yeah,
probably gonna do pretty well.
I still feel like the back if it's Kamara or Ingram, the guy to compare him to is probably Mark Ingram, right? Just more of that
But
power.
I don't think is he much of a bruiser? I thought he was
I thought he
light
was
on his feet.
Yeah.
He seems more
I mean,
like
5'10", 220. I mean, that's a big boy.
Yeah.
I see a lot of PPR value with him. So
I'd have to look back. I don't know the exact number in my head, but I feel like he's a guy who is really really good at like breaking tackles, getting through tackles. I thought that was more kind of his game. I never thought the Kamara end when I thought about Javonte. It's more kind of Mark Ingram, but we saw we saw plenty of passing down work for Ingram too. So yeah, definitely. So you don't see it turning into a spot where, say, next year the Broncos draft more of a pass catching back, and then Javonte really doesn't see receiving down work. You don't think that's going to be. You don't think that's a path really.
I mean, not entirely sure. I guess it's basically just Javonte and now P. Ryan that they signed.
Yeah. So they're gonna. I mean, they're gonna add to that room, right? As early as next year. I think it's pretty. You kind of have to. I know I picked up Jaleel McLaughlin, but the next Philip Lindsay, no.
I was just looking at Jaleel McLaughlin on your roster, and I was like, "Who's this guy? Who?"
He's got a lot of moxie.
Does he? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll take your word for it, pal.
So, who else we got here? I think we're all kind of in agreement. I think Marquise Brown, even in a shitty offense in Arizona, he's going to be a target hog probably. Mm-hmm. I don't know how much stock I put in Michael Wilson being there. I know he's been very injury riddled throughout his college career, so I'm not really sure what to expect there. A guy who can. We'll see how he does. I don't think anyone's taking Marquise's wide receiver kind of alpha receiver status anytime soon, I guess, in Arizona. I feel like the guy's going to sign another contract there and stay there probably. So that was kind of my thought on him. I feel like he was going to stay in Arizona, had a good chance to remain their alpha guy as far as targets. And so that was just kind of another – he's 26, so he's another guy, whereas my own – dynasty roster kind of hopefully ascends. He's someone where, in 2 or 3 years, say if my team becomes a contender, he could still be a contributor at 28 or 29. So, I mean, was there, in trading away Marquise, was there anything you kind of disagreed with there? Like, do you think he might not be long for Arizona at some point? Because I don't want to call it a lock, obviously, because a lot can change, year to year. But I got the gut feeling that he's going to be there for a while, and he's going to be, the primary target guy.
Yeah, no, there was nothing I disliked about Marquise. Maybe the only thing you could nitpick is his quarterback play next year, but he's still going to get a ton of targets. Maybe if like we said, they have I think it was the highest odds for the number 1 pick. Maybe if they don't move on from Kyler and they draft the Marvin Harrison Jr. from Ohio State, maybe that's a potential. That's very speculative, and that's how much you have to nitpick to try and downgrade Marquise Brown. He's really good. It wasn't easy to trade him away, but with that package, I was like, okay.
Yep.
I know
I would take that deal.
When we were looking at that thing just before the season before he got traded in Baltimore, and he thought it was too conservative of an offense and stuff. I feel like, go back and look at the numbers. I feel like about the first half of the year, he was like the wide receiver 6.
Yeah, he was hooping.
Supposedly conservative offense. So that was a point for me to he can be, even in a conservative offense, he can produce like that.
Mm-hmm.
That stood out to me.
Yeah.
And then I think the main part of this whole trade package here definitely got to dive into is Sterling Shepard. So, look, if Sterling Shepard's healthy, he could still be like. No,
That's
with
the
Waller there,
thing.
maybe he's not going to be like
For 2 weeks, he can give you 10 to 12 points.
Yes, has that
That's
chemistry with
probably
Daniel
it.
Jones, like even definitely could be the target hog of the receivers if we can get 17 games out of him. Which I guess we won't, but
We got 17 games out of Sterling Shepard. Oh boy.
But what injury is he coming off of here? Is that ACL too? I can't remember.
I thought it might have been Achilles, but
it was one of the big ones. So I think he's 30 now. So
I just put him on IR today.
Sterling Shepard
knee. So not great.
No, not great.
So if we're talking about, you're talking about the players in the first deal on my side going up, players on your side going down. On July 26th, 2023, are you still doing that first deal for Travis Kelce?
That's a very good question. You know what? Probably not. I mean, I would try and rework it, but as like if that offer came in like right now, I'd probably say no.
Because of Waller going to the Giants.
Yeah, because I pretty much like I wanted a big, like we said, I wanted an anchor at the time and like a big name in Kelce, and like Waller was good, but he wasn't that next level, and now I feel like he can easily get there this year. Honestly, I'd rather start Geno than Dak maybe this year too.
I mean, yeah.
I won't stand for it. I won't stand for the Dak slander.
Even though, even with that OC now in Dallas.
Oh God, what is it? Brian Schottenheimer. Oh
yeah.
my God. Yeah. Whatever. He was so good with Kellen Moore. I'm so surprised Kellen Moore didn't get a big time job.
Herbert.
He and Herbert are gonna go bananas though.
That's gonna be sexy.
Yeah, it is. So to make that first trade equal now, let's just go with what do you got to drop from the first package here to make it equal today? Would you say?
Let's see. If I was gonna go for Kelce, I think leaving the quarterbacks in would be fine. The whole Dalvin and Javonte is that's a big ouch right now. Because when I got Dalvin, I was assuming he'd still be on Minnesota, and he's been an RB1 for God knows how many years now. So
sure.
And now it's who knows what's happening. So
if we're dropping, so it's Geno, Darren Waller, Daniel Jones, 2025 first. For Kelce, Prescott, second and a third.
Even that I don't know if I'd still do.
Yeah.
I don't know if you would do that, Dane. I don't know. See, I don't know.
I was real big on trying to get Javonte for sure. So then I think because of my team strategy at the time, I think I'm still doing that. Yeah. So I don't know what else we can pull off substance-wise from this particular trade. Emery, you got anything else?
I don't. I believe that, like I said from the jump, I think that there's no like ringer of a winner in this. I think that if you get Kelce, you're gonna win some games either way, and you've Dane, gotten to the point where you are comfortable with the position of your team and the growth that you can expect from it. So yeah, there's wins in each of this. So I don't have anything else after that, really.
That's it. Yeah, that's kind of when you know it's a good trade, is when you see possible realistic W's on both sides, realistic L's on both sides. You know, I don't have Jones anymore. I don't have Waller anymore. Don't have Smith anymore. Got rid of all those guys too to get even younger. So it's hard to, you know, it's a little too hard to say where the L might come from on my team, other than just the guys that I traded Smith and Waller and Jones away for after that, like Trey Lance, like Marvin Mims and guys like that. So that's a little going to, you know, like another probably hour of conversation that we don't need to do here on the Dynasty Pod. So good talking Dynasty with all of you. Like, do you guys feel like you could just, if you know, didn't have to sleep or eat or anything, you could probably just talk Dynasty for 24/7?
Yeah, I wish my buddies in the hometown league were a little bit more in tune with Dynasty, because I'm ready to talk and they're like, oh man, it's not even August. You know, they reported to camp 2 days ago. It's like, yeah,
this is prime time, man. Prime time.
I know. This is where winners are, or this is where losers become winners and deals are won. So I don't know. Every time that I try to send a trade to someone in my hometown Dynasty, they're like, well, what did you just hear that I didn't hear? You know, like, yeah, like why would you suggest this if you weren't going to win? Like, you weren't going to clear this, you know? Yeah. So. Yeah, I don't know if I have anything else for y'all. It was a pleasure, Jimbo. Thank you.
That's right.
No, thank you guys for having me. This is great.
Yeah.
Good.
A little longer than expected, but
yeah, I think the only other one that might have went longer was episode 1, talking about everybody's team situation. So, you know what? We tried to keep it an hour when we first started this thing. I think all hope has been lost before
definitely.
even this episode. So
it's over. The thoughts for an hour? No.
Yeah. So hope it didn't go too long for anybody here. Sounds like it did. That's good.
No harm done.
So, yeah, for anyone who you know, is catching us live, or you know, if you catch you know, the video posting on later, catching the end of the episode here, thank you for viewing in. Thank you for watching. And we're here at the Dynasty Dive to try to keep your mind churning and your values fresh. And now that we're burnt out from talking Dynasty for 2 hours and my mind's not so fresh, you know, we'll get out of here, and we're done with our anchor series. Keep tuned to our Twitter account at RSJ Dynasty Dive to find out what we're coming at with next, because there's always some other angle you could take with Dynasty. So by the time next week rolls around, we'll definitely have it figured out. And we'll definitely try to keep some optimal substance for the viewers out there. And again, thank you for joining us viewing. Emery, thank you. Jimbo, thank you.
Yes.
And we'll see you next time. That's the wrong one. Hold on. Take 2. We'll see you next time.